Are the Toronto Maple Leafs seriously going to let nostalgia and sentimentality drive them to trade valuable assets for 35-year-old Nazem Kadri, a player who left Toronto 7 years ago and is now in the twilight of his career, just because the Scott Laughton acquisition didn't work out as planned? Or should Brad Treliving be looking for younger, more impactful solutions to fix the bottom six depth issues? All right, folks, we need to have a serious, no-nonsense conversation about this Nazem Kadri rumor that keeps resurfacing. This report, which is based on the same fan-created trade proposal we discussed earlier, the one that incorrectly included Brandon Carlo, is now focusing on the idea of bringing back Kadri to Toronto to solve the team's bottom six offensive depth problems. And while I understand the emotional appeal, Kadri was a beloved player during his time in Toronto. He won 2 Stanley Cups after leaving, and he represents the kind of gritty, productive center that the Leafs have been missing. We need to separate nostalgia from smart roster management. Let's break down the Scott Laughton situation, examine whether Kadri is truly the solution, and determine if this is a move that makes hockey sense or just emotional sense. The Scott Laughton situation. Let's start by addressing the elephant in the room, the Scott Laughton acquisition. The report states that Brad Treliving tried to solve the depth problem last season when he traded for Laughton from the Philadelphia Flyers. The goal was to add offensive depth to the bottom six. The result? According to this report, it was a disaster. Laughton struggled to find his offensive touch, recording only 4 points in 20 games with the Leafs. To make matters worse, Laughton has missed most of this season due to injury. Now, I need to fact-check this claim because it's critical to the entire narrative. Scott Laughton was indeed traded to the Toronto Maple Leafs from the Philadelphia Flyers at the trade deadline in March of 2024. However, his performance and injury history, as described in this report, need verification. If Laughton truly has struggled to produce and has been injured for most of the season, then yes, that acquisition would be considered a failure, and it would create urgency for Treliving to find a replacement. The report characterizes this as Treliving betting on Laughton to be the budget version of Kadri, and the bet failed spectacularly, leaving Toronto's bottom six soulless and pointless. That's harsh language, but if accurate, it reflects a genuine problem that needs to be addressed. Nazem Kadri. The proven solution? This is where the Kadri rumor gains traction. The report states, Kadri, the former Leaf of a decade, is not just a depth piece. He is a veteran who can provide offense to the bottom six in a proven way. He brings Stanley Cup winning experience, vocal leadership, and the physical identity that the team has lost. Let's be clear about what Nazem Kadri represents. He played for the Toronto Maple Leafs from 2013 to 2019, and he was a productive, physical, sometimes controversial center who provided secondary scoring and playoff intensity. After being traded to Colorado in 2019, in the deal that brought Tyson Barrie and Alexander Kerfoot to Toronto, Kadri went on to win the Stanley Cup of the Avalanche in 2022, recording 15 goals and 28 points in 16 playoff games. He then signed with the Calgary Flames and won another cup. Wait, that's not right. Kadri signed with Calgary in 2022, but has not won a second Stanley Cup. The report states he has Stanley Cup winning experience, which is accurate from his time in Colorado, but we need to be precise about his accomplishments. Currently, Kadri is 35 years old. He'll turn 35 in October 2025, and last season with Calgary, he recorded 29 goals and 75 points in 82 games. That's solid production, especially for a player his age. He's still capable of contributing offensively, and he brings the kind of playoff experience and physical play that Toronto values. However, and this is crucial, Kadri is no longer the player he was in his prime. He's 35 years old, which means he's in the twilight of his career. His skating has likely declined, his durability might be more questionable, and his best years are behind him. The question Toronto needs to ask is, do we want to trade valuable young assets for a 35-year-old player who might give us 2 or 3 more productive years? Or should we be targeting younger players who can contribute for longer? The price: Max Domi and Nick Robertson. The fan proposal suggests sending Max Domi and Nick Robertson, along with the fictional Brandon Carlo and a second-round pick, to Calgary for Kadri and Rasmus Andersson. Let's focus on the forward component. Trading Domi and Robertson for Kadri. The fan debate, as described in the report, is divided. Trading Domi and Robertson for Kadri, 35 years old, is controversial. Domi brings energy, and Robertson is our best offensive prospect. But neither of them has Kadri's guaranteed playoff production. We're trading potential and energy for proven playoff production. It's exactly what Berube wants. Here's my analysis of that trade. Max Domi. Domi is a 29-year-old center/winger who signed a 4-year deal with Toronto. He brings energy, offensive creativity, and versatility. Last season, he recorded 9 goals and 47 points in 80 games. He's a useful depth player, but he's not irreplaceable. Nick Robertson. Robertson is a 23-year-old winger who has shown flashes of offensive ability, but has struggled with injuries and consistency. He's recorded 14 goals and 22 points in 61 NHL games over his career. He's still a prospect with potential, but he hasn't established himself as a reliable NHL contributor yet. Nazem Kadri. Kadri is a 35-year-old veteran with proven playoff production, leadership, and physical play. He's still capable of scoring 25 to 30 goals and providing 50 to 70 points. From a pure value perspective, trading Domi and Robertson for Kadri is trading youth and potential for proven veteran production. If Toronto believes they have a 2 to 3 year championship window and they need immediate help, then it might make sense. However, if they're thinking long-term, then giving up a 23-year-old prospect, Robertson, for a 35-year-old veteran Kadri is questionable. The report states, acquiring Kadri will be trail-living admitting his mistake with Laughton and paying the price, Robertson, to correct it with a player who should never have left. That's an emotional framing, and it's dangerous. General managers should not make roster decisions based on correcting past mistakes or on nostalgia. They should make decisions based on what's best for the team's current and future competitiveness. If Kadri is genuinely the best available option to solve Toronto's bottom 6 depth issues, then pursue him. But don't do it just to correct a mistake or because of sentimental attachment. The Calgary obstacle. The report correctly identifies that, just like with Andersson, the deal depends on Calgary's willingness to sell. The Flames are struggling and sit at the bottom of the NHL standings, but they have not signaled that they are planning a rebuild. If Calgary isn't committed to selling their veterans, then Kadri might not be available regardless of what Toronto offers. My strong opinion. Here's my take, Leafs Nation. Bringing back Nazem Kadri would be a feel-good story, a nostalgic reunion that would excite fans and bring back memories of his time in Toronto. But from a pure hockey perspective, I'm skeptical that it's the right move. Kadri is 35 years old. Yes, he's still productive, but he's in the twilight of his career. Trading young assets like Nick Robertson for a player who might only have 2 or 3 productive years left is a gamble that could backfire. If Kadri's production declines rapidly, if he gets injured, or if he simply can't keep up with the pace of the modern NHL, then Toronto will have given up a young prospect for minimal return. Furthermore, the Scott Laughton acquisition failing doesn't mean the solution is to trade for another aging veteran. Maybe the lesson is that Toronto needs to develop internal options to give opportunities to younger players, or to target players who are in their prime late 20s, rather than veterans in their mid-30s. The conclusion states, the Nazem Kadri rumor, although started by a fan, forces the Leafs management to look in the mirror. The hole in the bottom 6 is real. The Scott Laughton experiment failed, and Nazem Kadri is the obvious solution that was always there. I disagree with that conclusion. Kadri is a solution, but he's not necessarily the best solution. Toronto needs to be smart, strategic, and forward-thinking. They can't let nostalgia and sentimentality drive their roster decisions. They need to find players who can contribute now and in the future, not just veterans who bring short-term fixes. If Brad Trailiving can acquire Kadri for a reasonable price, maybe a mid-round pick and a depth player, without giving up significant young assets, then sure, it's worth exploring. But if Calgary is demanding Nick Robertson or other valuable prospects, then Toronto should walk away and look for better options. What do you think, Leafs Nation? Should the Toronto Maple Leafs bring back Nazem Kadri to solve their bottom 6 depth issues? Is trading Nick Robertson for a 35-year-old veteran a smart move, or is it letting nostalgia cloud judgment? And what other options should Brad Trailiving be exploring to fix the depth scoring problems? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear all your perspectives on this controversial potential reunion. And if you want to stay on top of every trade rumor, every nostalgic reunion possibility, and every breaking news story as the NHL season unfolds, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe. We'll be here breaking down every significant development, separating smart hockey decisions from emotional reactions, and you won't want to miss a single update as we continue to chase that ultimate prize,